Yes. Very interesting. Oh! Greetings, adventurers. I didn't hear you come in. Welcome to Miniature Legends, a place where even the smallest of figures can be legendary. I am Zaxatar, and recently, I found myself with the desire to push my miniature painting skills and compete against others after I stumbled across this Pathfinder miniature painting contest. Not sponsored, by the way, though, Paizo, if you'd like to, that would be wonderful. Anyway, I know from experience that one can gain a lot from competitive miniature painting, regardless of where they are in their hobby journey. If you're interested in competitive miniature painting, or curious about how I went about crafting that kobold you passed on the way in, please join me as I share 5 reasons why I'd recommend you compete in miniature painting contests. Recently, I have been enjoying the world of Faerun in Baldur's Gate 3, and I found myself inspired by the dark and volcanic environment of Grymforge. Stumbling across these lovely artworks depicting the kobolds of Pathfinder by J.J. Canvas and Wayne Reynolds, I had a vision for the project in mind. I've always wanted to place a display miniature on a plinth, so I quickly printed one from FDM and got to sanding. I got to crafting the dungeon that our kobold will be standing within, cutting down some corkboard and gluing it in place. Then, I added some air-dry clay to build the impression of stone. I took a bit from a previous project, broke it, and affixed it. I wanted this to look like a section of stonework that had fallen into the lava and had begun to melt. A few stones as rubble, and a layer of PVA and sand for texture. Then, a layer of PVA glue to smooth the lava sections. I believe that competition painting gives you a reason, an additional motivating factor to try something new, experiment with painting techniques, try that basing technique you've never used, attempt a new color of object source lighting. Maybe it doesn't work, or isn't exactly what you expected, but the process of attempting, building, and learning new things is always worthwhile. I find when miniature painting, you often repeat methods and techniques unconsciously. Step 1 is to prime, step 2 is to base coat, and so on. But why are you doing it that way? Is it just the way you've learned how to do it, or do you have a specific reason behind each step? When competitive painting, you are trying to express skill level and show mastery of a given technique, which means deviating from the list if it doesn't serve your creative goals. In this case, I decided to start with the light. The light is the main character, if you will, of this scene. It sets the mood and ambience. So my focus is trying to capture how the light should fall across the miniature, highlighting from below as I began to establish the base coats. When it came to the base, I got to work establishing some color differences within the stonework. then blended them quite a bit with a series of dark, warm-toned washes. I'm going to use my airbrush for establishing the gradients of light, so I made sure to tape off all the edges to prevent overspray. At this point, I glued the miniature to the base and got to work establishing the light sources. Applying thin gradients of color to sketch out where I want light and where I want shadows. Then layering translucent reds and oranges across the miniature to shift everything beneath. What a nice effect! If this was a standard tabletop miniature, I might paint the details and call it a day. But this is a competition piece, so it's time to move on to the next phase. But first, if you're enjoying this video and like to see more, please let the YouTube imp know by pressing upon these buttons. I like to think of any creative endeavor like so, where the y-axis represents your skill level with a given medium, and the x-axis represents the amount of time you invest into a given project. And this line represents the completeness of the project. Anyway, this area under the curve is your skill expression, your creativity and your effort. That's what the judge will, hopefully, be looking at. The winner is the one who has put as much possible work into the area beneath the curve, fighting against burnout, distractions, and indecision. I know it's a bit dull to explain creativity in art in terms of calculus, but you came to a wizard for painting advice. What did you expect? Anyway, here I am working on cleaning up the overspray and painting a few details. One of the ways I am pushing myself with this project is the background. I have not done much painting on flat surfaces, and I found myself revising and hesitating quite a bit as I struggled to paint what I had envisioned. I used the airbrush to brighten the lava ripples, and decided to darken my background with some inks. I don't think the ink worked as well as I had hoped, and I found myself redoing this section again, this time with a greater focus on the lava flows. At this point, I found myself very discouraged, and struggling how to proceed. Things weren't turning out how I wanted, and I found myself adding details, being frustrated by how they appeared, then adding more details, hoping that I could push forwards towards something I would be happy with. Finally, I just started glazing some black to darken the cavern and cover up all these imperfections. This helped a bit, and I managed to get the cavern looking half decent. But I was beginning to feel lost and discouraged by this project. I decided to switch focus onto the Kobold's necklace. I felt the project needed more blue, so I began working on some magical OSL glow coming from the now crystalline fangs. But I was still stuck in that frustration, so I asked for help. I needed to step back and reassess this project. Too often, you can find yourself so focused on a particular section that you can neglect aspects of the larger work. So, I took some photos and asked for help online. I got lots of wonderful feedback. Having fresh eyes really can help. With these clear issues identified, I jumped back to work, beginning with blacklighting the piece. This environment should have very harsh shadows, and this immediately helped. Then, by darkening the stonework and lightening the lava values further. I decided that the crossbow was rather strange being unloaded, so I downloaded a bolt STL made by Pellinor, resculpted it, and quickly printed it. File in the description if you're interested. Then, I got to work on enhancing the blues, both from the necklace and using it as a shadow color. Giving the scales some much needed texture and highlights. Pushing those light source values, and adding texture and wear to the leather armor. Working on selling the heat with the airbrush. Moment of truth. How did the painter's tape do? Very nice. When you regularly choose to push your skill level through competitive painting, you create benchmarks, snapshots of your skill level at a given time. This is very helpful for showing how you have improved, and you tend to get lots of lovely miniatures throughout the process. For example, this vampire by Nocturna Miniatures is one of my favorite works. When it comes to online contests, one of the most valuable pieces of advice I've heard is, online miniature painting contests are photography contests. Not to say that the painting isn't important, but if you take a blurry photo in bad lighting, you are certainly not going to give the judge a good impression of your work. I recommend you give your miniature a good matte finish, take photographs with a diffused daylight bulb, and make sure you're not overexposing your photos. While I can't say I'm an expert in this matter, I would recommend this excellent video by Louise at Rogue Hobbies if you'd like to get a more in-depth look at how to take lovely photographs. Link in the card above. Now, without further ado, let's take a look at my latest benchmark. I hope you enjoyed watching me craft this kobold. If you'd like to print and enter one of your own, there's a link in the description down below. For now, if you want to see more of my work with miniatures, why not click on the video on the top left? I hope to see you again soon. Farewell, adventurers.